I sat at my corner desk, the morning sun filtering through the blinds, casting golden stripes across my silk blouse. The office hummed softly around me, phones ringing, keyboards tapping, a symphony of productivity that I had built myself, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. And yet, beneath the quiet success, a pulse of old pain throbbed, a memory I had tucked away but never quite buried. My phone buzzed, breaking the fragile calm. A message from my mother's number glared at me. "We need to talk. Come home." I froze, my coffee cup trembling in my hand. It had been years since I'd heard from them. Years since the night they threw me out with nothing but $3 in my pocket and a fury I couldn't comprehend. I could still feel the sting of her hand, the cold glare of my stepfather, and the weight of his expectations for his son, a boy I had refused to serve. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to sip my coffee and pretend the past was irrelevant. But another part, smarter now, braver, knew this was the reckoning I'd been ready for, whether they were or not. I looked around my office, at the shelves lined with awards, my first profitable project framed on the wall, the soft leather chair that had become my throne of sorts. The irony wasn't lost on me. The girl they had discarded had not only survived, she had thrived. And now it was time they realized just how much I had rebuilt. I still remember that night as if it were yesterday. I was 16, scrubbing dishes in the cramped kitchen of our small suburban house in Ohio, the smell of burnt lasagna still clinging to the air. My stepfather, Greg, leaned against the counter, his gaze sharp, his voice colder than winter wind. "Emily, serve your brother first," he commanded, pointing to his 16-year-old son, Jason. I shook my head.
"No."
"He's had enough, and I'm not doing it," I said, my voice trembling more from fear than defiance. The words barely left my mouth when the room erupted. My mother, Linda, her face twisted in anger, shouted, "How dare you? You'll do as you're told." Greg advanced toward me, his hand raised. The sting of his slap burned across my cheek, and I stumbled back, heart hammering, tears blurring my vision. The humiliation, the rage, the fear, it all fused into a hot knot in my chest. I could barely breathe. "You're worthless," Greg spat. "You're nothing without us." Then, as if to seal my fate, my mother handed me a crumpled wad of bills.
$3. Here.
"Take this and leave. Don't come back unless you obey." That night, I walked into the cold Ohio streets, my feet bare against the frost, clutching that pathetic $3 bill like it was a lifeline. Every step away from that house burned with both pain and determination. It wasn't until I found refuge at my grandmother's place that the first glimmer of hope appeared. Nana didn't ask questions. She handed me a notebook and said, "Emily, your hands can create more than anyone thinks. Use them. Build something they can't touch." That small gesture, so simple, became my anchor. I tucked the notebook into my backpack and whispered a promise to myself. I will never be powerless again. That night I decided I would rebuild, not just survive, but rise. The world would see me on my terms, not theirs. Leaving my grandmother's house with nothing but that $3 bill and a small notebook felt terrifying and exhilarating all at once. I took odd jobs at diners, bookstores, anywhere that would let me earn a few dollars and learn a little independence. Nights were the hardest, sleeping on friends' couches or in tiny, shared apartments, but every morning I woke determined to move one step closer to the life I imagined. It was during one of those long nights at a local coffee shop that I met Claire, a woman in her 40s with a sharp blazer and sharper intuition. She noticed the sketches and notes scattered across my table and asked, "Are you trying to build something?" Her voice carried no judgment, only curiosity. That brief conversation turned into mentorship. Claire taught me the business side of creativity, encouraged me to take risks, and, most importantly, believed I was capable of more than I had ever imagined. The early days were grueling. I spent hours perfecting designs, learning the nuances of finance and marketing, and pitching myself to anyone who would listen. Rejections piled up, but each no hardened my resolve rather than breaking it. I learned to celebrate the small victories. The first client who paid me $200 for a custom piece, the first online review praising my work, the first paycheck that covered more than rent and groceries. Those tiny sparks of success kept me moving forward. Through it all, I never told my family what I was doing. Every holiday, I spent politely nodding to inquiries from my mother or stepfather about school or work, giving them vague updates that hinted at struggle, but never revealed the truth. My triumphs were my own secret rebellion, a quiet, persistent proof that I could survive and thrive without them. By the time I was 25, I had transformed that shaky beginning into a small but flourishing design studio. My projects were being featured in local magazines, and my name slowly became recognized in the circles I had once dreamed of entering. Every sale, every contract, every smile from a satisfied client felt like a small reclaiming of the power they had tried to strip from me. The notebook from my grandmother still sat on my desk, pages filled with ideas and reminders. Whenever I felt doubt creeping in, I would glance at it and remember her words, "Build something they can't touch." And I had. Quietly, invisibly, I had built not just a career, but a fortress of independence and pride, one that no slap, no insult, no eviction could ever shake. The knock at my office door came earlier than I expected. My assistant, Taylor, stepped in, her eyebrows slightly raised. "Emily, your family is here." The words felt strange in the sterile air, like ghosts slipping into a room that didn't belong to them. I stood, smoothing the silk of my blouse, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor as I made my way to the lobby. There they were, Linda, my mother, clinging to her handbag like it might shield her, and Greg, my stepfather, still wearing that same sharp scowl I remembered. Jason lingered just behind them, older now but carrying the same entitled air. They looked out of place among the glass walls, the curated art pieces, and the warm scent of coffee drifting from the reception area. For a moment, they simply stared. Their eyes swept over the minimalist chandeliers, the elegant leather seating, the company logo gleaming on the wall. Harper and Company. Design Studio. My name. My company. My life. Emily. My mother's voice cracked as she spoke, as if she couldn't quite believe it. This is yours. I let a small, deliberate smile tug at my lips.
Yes.
All of it. Greg's mouth tightened, his eyes darting around as though searching for proof this wasn't real. You can't expect me to believe that you built this. I walked them into my office, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of my success sink into them. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, sunlight pouring in, illuminating the awards lining my shelves. My first framed project hung proudly behind my desk, a reminder of the night I had cried over that $200 client, knowing it was the start of everything. They sat stiffly in front of me, the plush chairs swallowing them in an irony that didn't escape me. Jason finally spoke, his voice edged with disbelief. "So, you're actually running this? You own it." I leaned back, folding my hands in my lap.
Yes.
And more. Harper and Company isn't just thriving, it's valued in the millions. I have clients across the country, partnerships with firms you've only seen in magazines.
This is my life now.
The one you told me I could never have. Silence. My mother's lips trembled, her eyes glassy. Greg's jaw clenched, as if every word I spoke was a dagger. Jason shifted uncomfortably, his cocky demeanor faltering. For the first time in my life, they were speechless. For the first time, they saw me not as the girl they had slapped, belittled, and thrown out, but as a woman who had risen without their help, despite their cruelty. I stood, walking toward the bookshelf where Nana's old notebook still rested. I ran my fingers along its worn cover and then turned back to them. You gave me $3 and told me to leave. You thought you were cutting me down. But what you really did was give me the chance to prove that I didn't need you, that I could rebuild, and I did. Better than you could ever imagine. Their faces told the story, shame in my mother's lowered eyes, disbelief in Jason's silence, and fury barely masked in Greg's tight fists. For once, I wasn't the one trembling. I let the silence linger, savoring the power shift that had taken a lifetime to earn. For once, I wasn't the girl begging for scraps of love or respect. I was the woman holding all the cards. My mother finally broke the silence. Emily, we didn't know. We didn't realize how much you'd accomplished. Her voice was fragile, almost childlike. I leaned forward, my gaze steady.
No, Mom.
You did know. You just didn't care. You cared about control, about appearances, about making sure I stayed small. And when I didn't fit your script, you threw me out. Greg shifted in his chair, his voice sharp. We were trying to teach you discipline. You should be grateful. Look where you ended up. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Grateful? You hit me, humiliated me, abandoned me with $3. Don't mistake my success as the result of your cruelty. I made it in spite of you, not because of you. Jason finally spoke up, his voice subdued. So, why did you even let us in? I took a breath, weighing my words carefully. Because power means choice. And I'm choosing not to repeat the patterns you lived by. I'm willing to help, but only if you're willing to change. They exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unprepared for terms and conditions. I stood, moving to the window, the city stretching wide and endless below. Here's how this works, I said firmly. If you want my help, you will meet my conditions. I turned first to my mother. Linda, you will stop excusing abuse. You will stop burying your voice for the sake of men who want to control you. If you want a relationship with me, it starts with honesty and accountability. No more pretending you didn't know what was happening. Her face flushed, tears slipping down her cheeks. She nodded weakly, whispering, I can try. Then I turned to Greg. My voice hardened. You have no place in my life unless you confront your violence. Therapy, accountability, and a genuine apology, not excuses. If you can't do that, then you'll never see me again. And I won't lose a single night's sleep over it. He shifted, clearly enraged but boxed in. For the first time, he had no power over me. Finally, I looked at Jason. He avoided my eyes, fidgeting with his phone. Jason, entitlement won't carry you forever. If you want me in your life, you'll work for something real. A job, a passion, a goal that doesn't rely on other people serving you. Until then, don't expect me to carry you. The weight of my words filled the room. They sat frozen, each processing the fact that the roles had reversed. I wasn't the discarded girl anymore. I was the one setting the rules, and they were the ones who had to decide if they could live with them. For a long while, no one spoke. My mother's hands trembled in her lap. Greg's jaw clenched like a trap ready to snap, and Jason sat sunk into the leather chair, stripped of his usual bravado. The silence didn't feel uncomfortable to me anymore. It felt like justice. When my mother finally raised her eyes to mine, there was something softer in them, something almost unfamiliar. Emily, she whispered, I'll try. I don't want to lose you again. Her words weren't an absolution, but they were a beginning. Greg didn't speak. His silence was loud, but I had already given him the choice, accountability or exile. Jason muttered something about finding work, his voice heavy with reluctance, but there was no mocking tone this time. Maybe, just maybe, a crack had formed in the wall of entitlement. I walked back to my desk and picked up Nana's old notebook. The cover was frayed, the pages worn, but it still held the sketches, the dreams, the raw beginnings of everything I had built. Holding it, I felt her presence, her wisdom echoing in my ears. Build something they can't touch. And I had. Looking at them now, I realized this wasn't about revenge. It was about closure. I had carried the weight of their rejection for too long, letting it fuel me, guide me. But I didn't need their approval anymore. My life, my company, my success, those were mine. Untouchable. I set the notebook gently on the desk and looked at them one final time. I don't need apologies to survive.
I don't need you to validate me.
But if you want a place in my life, you'll have to earn it. The same way I did. The city skyline gleamed behind me, a horizon of endless possibilities I had carved with my own two hands. And as they sat in silence, I knew one thing for certain. The girl they had thrown out with $3 was gone forever. In her place stood a woman who had rebuilt not just a classic, but herself.